Hi, I'm Sameer Jain, a little spring in the air. Sometime back, someone wanted to know if she ought to support a bunch of guys, NGO, that was blocking the development of a new business, a new factory that would harm the wonderful environment, and whether she should support that NGO. A bit of a moral dilemma, if you may. Nowadays, NGOs have gained a lot more power and legitimacy, and businesses increasingly has to answer to them as stakeholders. The problem is these groups, while they have gained varying legitimate status, many of them wield enormous power. And I say that power without legitimacy can constitute a dangerous situation. So I told her not to support the biodiversity hotspot and block the factory that was being proposed. But let me explain my reasons, lest you think me heartless. The traditional stockholder-oriented approach holds that the firm exists principally to maximize returns to shareholders. Milton Friedman and others argue that the role of business is predominantly economic, period. It is to create as much wealth as possible while operating within the rules laid down by society. And the unbridled exercise of power is constrained by labor laws, commercial code, etc. And when business tries to do more than that, when it exceeds to the demands of the crowd, or the environmentalists in this case, they give legitimacy to unlegislated taxes to be imposed on their shareholders. This thus undermines their own legitimacy, and some also say, and I believe, this can often be the path to poverty for a society. On the other hand, the stakeholder approach asserts that the firm is responsible to and should be run for the benefit of a number of constituencies, employees, environment, customers, etc. too. And at the heart of the stakeholder model is the principle that all persons must be respected. People are ends in themselves and not a means to an end. So unlike the stockholder model, which dictates that all actions and decisions must be taken with a view to support owners' interest, the stakeholder model offers very few guidelines as to which stakeholder group gets priority. And it would help if practicing managers such as ourselves were able to appraise stakeholders in terms of their power, their legitimacy, and their urgency. So placing a stakeholder in the right category often provides a pointer on how that stakeholder should be treated. So let me build on it. The first thing is power. What is usually meant by power is that one party has the means to get its way even in the face of resistance by others. Joe Nye has talked a lot about this soft power. But power of all kinds can be temporary. It can be easily lost. And we've seen arrogant companies having to bow to stakeholder pressure. Power may be latent, that is, it is not exercised. So we managers should be aware of people's quiescent interest. People lie dormant until their interests are awakened, as in the case of environmentalists here. The second thing is legitimacy, which is a second way of classifying stakeholders. An obvious basis of legitimacy is that some relationship exists between the firm and the stakeholder, and such a contract or a company may be significantly responsible for a stakeholder's well-being. I guess the presence of risk may also invoke legitimacy claims. A moral claim can also constitute legitimacy. So this means that the stakeholder, the environmentalist here, can benefit or be harmed or have rights upheld or violated by corporate actions. And this gives them, the second point, legitimacy. The third dimension is urgency, within which to classify stakeholders. For example, setting up this plant here will screw up this environment so badly that people won't be able to live here. So while each of these three dimensions can grab the attention of managers in combinations, they are likely to be even more salient when together. Of course, there may be a disagreement about the extent of the attributes possessed by different stakeholders, and we managers over or underestimate the extent of shareholder attributes at our peril. We've seen that a mishandled stakeholder problem can sometimes deteriorate into a crisis. And then there are some who advocate that a responsible approach to business or an enlightened self-interest requires a shift in the purpose of business from shareholders to all stakeholders. My position on this issue is that the only thing business is good at, is well suited at, is that it can maximize the material well-being of a society. And the striving of each company in the great country we live in to maximize the net present value takes Adam Smith's invisible hand out of its pockets and put it to work by best allocating a company's and a society's resources. But now this is where the problem lies. Maximizing wealth for shareholders, which I think is a very noble objective in itself, often conflicts with other stakeholders, and in this case, the environment. So much of the time, the business case coincides with the stakeholder case when powerful, legitimate, urgent stakeholders are involved. But there are many stakeholders with no power. And even if much of the business world admits the legitimacy of these stakeholders, it is unwilling to grant them the attention and see their plight as an urgent matter. See, the way to look at it is, I think, the ultimate purpose is advancing the human condition, and I might agree that shareholder returns may be a means to that end and not the other way around, but I do not accede and I do not believe that blocking shareholder returns for the environment is a cause more worthy. And that is why I discouraged her from protesting. Thank you for listening in.